In this video, we're going to transform these boring numbers into this. If you've never built a dashboard before, this is your video. We're keeping it simple, but the result? People are going to think you've been doing this for years. We received this email from our client Velora. They're asking us to build a dashboard to analyze their data from the past year, and they specifically mention one key metric: profit. Velora is a fictional premium retail company that sells tech products, furniture, and office supplies. That means our dashboard needs to match that premium identity: clean, elegant, and professional. Let's start by taking a look at our data. We have a simple dataset with 9 columns, including dates, regions, products, categories, customer segments, revenue, and cost. Now, the main metric we need for our dashboard is profit, but you'll notice there's no profit column here. That's completely fine. We can create it ourselves. We'll add a new column called profit, and the formula is simple: revenue minus cost. Double-click at the bottom right corner of the cell, and Excel automatically fills the formula all the way down for every row. Now, the most important tool for building our dashboard is PivotTables. Let me give you a quick explanation in case you're not familiar with them. We click on any cell inside our data range, then go to the Insert tab and select Pivot Table. Excel automatically detects and selects the whole range for us, and then it asks where we want to place the pivot table. Let's keep it in the same sheet. So what exactly is a pivot table? It's a tool that lets you summarize and explore large amounts of data instantly. You choose what information to display, and Excel summarizes the data for you. Once it's created, you'll notice all our column names appear on the right side as fields we can work with. We can drag any of them into one of the 4 areas below. Let's drag region into the rows area. And just like that, the pivot table lists every unique region that exists in our dataset. Now things get more interesting when we use the values area, which is where the real power is. If we drag a numeric field like profit into values, Excel will automatically calculate the total profit for each region. So it sums up all the rows where region is east, then all the rows where region is north, and so on. And at the bottom, it gives us the grand total. We can also drag a second field into the rows area. If we add product, it now appears as subcategories under each region. We can even move product into the columns area instead, which completely changes the structure of the table. That flexibility is exactly what makes pivot tables so powerful. They let you take a huge amount of raw information and turn it into clear, focused insights in just a few clicks. Now, one very useful feature that comes with pivot tables is the slicer. A slicer is basically a visual filter. For example, if we insert a slicer for category, we get a set of buttons, one for each category in our data. When we click on one, the pivot table instantly updates and shows results only for that selection. And this button up here clears all filters and brings everything back. The last pivot table concept we need is the pivot chart. A pivot chart works exactly like a regular Excel chart, but it is directly connected to a pivot table. So when we click a slicer button, it does not just update the table, but also the chart at the same time. So they are connected, and that is exactly what will make our dashboard interactive. Now let's create the pivot tables that will actually power our dashboard. We will use a new worksheet to keep everything organized. Let's rename it Pivots. This sketch here can help us as a guide for the final result, so we know exactly what we are aiming at. Let's start with the KPI pivot tables. We need 5 of them, one for each KPI. These are actually the simplest pivots we will create because all we need is the metric in the values area. And as we already know, they will update automatically whenever the slicer changes. Let's rename the pivot table to help us organize our work better. KPI_revenue is fine. Now, to work more efficiently, we can simply copy an existing pivot table by selecting all its cells, which in our case is only 2 cells, and then make adjustments. For this one, we just replace revenue with cost. Rename it again, and done. Same logic for the third KPI, which is profit. Now let's move to the average units KPI. Here we need to pay attention because sum is not the result we want. If we think about our data, each row represents an order with a certain number of units. We want to know the average order size, not the total. First, let's change the format from currency to numbers. Okay, so we click the small arrow next to the field, go to Value Field Settings, and simply change sum to average. Rename it, and ready. The last KPI returns the top product by profit. This one needs a small extra step. We add product to rows and profit to values as usual, but then we need to filter it down to just the number one product. We click the drop-down arrow on row labels, go to Value Filters, then Top 10. In the window that opens, we just change 10 to 1, since we only want the single top product ranked by total profit. And it returns product D. Rename it, and done. Now is a good moment to add the slicer we will be using in the dashboard. And that is the region slicer. If we click on it now though, we notice it only affects the pivot table that was active when we inserted it. That is completely normal behavior, but we needed to control every pivot table. So we go to Report Connections, and here we see the full list of all our pivot tables. We take all of them and hit OK. Now let's test it. Perfect. Now all pivot tables are connected to the slicer. Now let's build the pivot tables for our charts. The first chart will show profit over time. So we drag profit to values and date to rows. You will notice something interesting here. Excel does not just add date, it automatically creates additional fields like months and days. This is Excel recognizing that dates have a natural hierarchy and offering you multiple levels to work with. In our case, months is exactly what we want. So since it sits above days in the hierarchy, it is the level that will be displayed in the chart. We can ignore the days field for now. Let's insert a line chart for this one. Okay, looks good. Now for the next chart. We need profit by product. Simple enough. I'll also add a short description above the pivot table just to help us stay organized. This part is optional. For this chart, we need a column chart. Perfect. Next, we create profit by category. We copy the profit pivot and just drag category into rows. Oh, I forgot to insert the chart. There we go. Don't worry too much about the appearance of the charts for now. In the next step, we'll move everything into the final dashboard sheet and properly format it there. Next is profit by sales channel. And for this one, we'll use a donut chart. It's in the pie category. Perfect. And finally, profit by customer segment, again using a donut chart. As you may have noticed, we also renamed all pivot charts properly. Now let's quickly check the slicer connections. You can see that all pivot tables and charts are already connected automatically. This happened because we copied existing pivot tables to create the new ones, so the slicer connections were copied as well. Let's verify by clicking the slicer. Everything updates together exactly as we want for a fully interactive dashboard. Now let's create one final new sheet, which will be our dashboard. We select all the charts and the slicer together using Ctrl or Shift. Cut them with Ctrl and X, and paste them into the dashboard sheet with Ctrl and V. This way, the pivots sheet stays completely separate and out of sight. It will not be part of the visual dashboard at all. It simply works in the background as the hidden engine that drives everything we see. Okay, right now everything might look a bit chaotic, but let's start putting some order here. We will roughly arrange the charts into position without focusing on perfection just yet. For now, we just want a general sense of where each chart will live. Let's also move the slicer here. At the top we have space for the KPIs, and as a nice addition we can also insert the logo of our client, Velora. Okay, we select the image and place it into Excel. Let's reduce its size a bit. As we can see, the logo has a white background. It looks much more professional if we remove it. And the good news is, Excel has a built-in tool to do exactly that. This purple color shows the areas Excel automatically detects as background to remove. It actually did a very good job, but it also removed the word Velora. No problem. Using this option, we can manually mark the areas we want to keep, so we'll simply select the letters. Notice how their color changes? That means Excel now understands these parts should remain visible. And if we need to remove an area manually like now, we can also do that with this option here. Perfect. Now let's also crop the white edges around the logo to use the space more cleanly. For the KPIs, we will use shapes to display each value. Let's insert a shape. This one works perfectly. Now, to make the actual KPI value appear inside it, we click on the shape, then go to the formula bar and type equals, followed by clicking the cell from our pivot sheet that holds that KPI value. The number now lives inside the shape and will update automatically with the slicer, just like everything else. Let's also insert a text box for the KPI title, Revenue. Perfect. Now we can simply copy this KPI card 4 more times instead of rebuilding everything from scratch. Then we just update the linked cell from the formula bar and change the title accordingly. Perfect. Now each rectangle displays the correct KPI, and all titles are updated as well. In this lower left corner, we can also insert another shape where we'll place a few key insights from the dashboard. And finally, let's change the colors of the workbook to something closer to the Velora brand identity, even though later we'll fine-tune the exact colors and styling in more detail. Now let's add some precision. We will make all 4 charts exactly the same size by setting an identical height and width. Select each chart and type the values manually in the size fields. You can experiment here, but I find that 3.3 and 5.5 inches works nicely. We repeat for the other 3 charts. Let's also reposition the slicer, expand the insights shape at the bottom, and stretch the line chart so it fills all the available space on its side. At this stage, feel free to arrange things however feels right to you. There is no single correct layout here. Now let's focus on the KPI cards and give them a proper look. Select the first shape, press Ctrl and 1 to open the Format Shape panel. We are going to change the fill color, and instead of a flat single color, we will use a gradient fill, which blends 2 or more colors smoothly into each other. This gives the card a much more refined and polished feel, which fits perfectly with Velora's premium identity. For the first color stop, we will create a custom dark green. This looks good. For the second stop, we pick something slightly lighter, just enough to create a subtle color transition. And for the third stop, we can select again the first deep green, which you can find quickly in the recent colors. Now, by dragging the gradient stops, those small markers you see on the gradient bar, we control where each color sits and how sharp the transition is. The closer the stops are to each other, the more dramatic the color change. Let's also remove the shape outline so the edges stay clean. Now let's make the text white for better contrast, increase the font size, and choose a font that suits Velora's premium brand. I think Georgia works really well here. Let's also shift the text slightly to the right because we are going to add a small icon on the left side of each card. And to finish the card styling, let's add a subtle bevel effect to give it a light three-dimensional look. Go to Shape Format, then Shape Effects, and apply a bevel. That already looks much more premium. Now we need to apply all of this to the other 4 cards as well. Luckily, we do not have to repeat every step manually. We use Format Painter for that. And here is a useful tip. If you double-click on Format Painter instead of single-clicking, it stays active and you can apply the formatting to multiple shapes one after the other without having to click the button again each time. Let's also clean up the title text boxes. Nothing complicated here, just center the text, change the font, increase the size, and remove both the background fill and the outline so they look like clean floating labels. This is also a good moment to turn off the sheet grid lines. Go to the View tab and uncheck Grid Lines. Immediately the whole sheet looks cleaner. Now use Format Painter again to copy the title formatting across all 5 labels. To make sure all titles sit at exactly the same vertical height, we select all of them together, go to Shape Format, then Align, and choose Align Middle. Now it's time to add the icons inside the KPI cards. We go to the Insert tab and then Icons. There's a huge variety available here, so we can use the search bar to quickly find something relevant. Let's try searching for revenue. Okay, I can already see good options for our first 3 KPIs. So let's insert them. All 3 icons were inserted together. Now we simply place each one into the correct KPI card and change their color to white for better contrast. Now we need an icon for top product. Let's search for winner. This one looks perfect. Same process as before. And for the final KPI, average units, let's search for product. Okay, this works fine. Now for the top product KPI, we can also display the actual profit value of the product to provide a bit more information. So let's insert a new text box and connect it to the pivot table cell from the formula bar. A few small formatting adjustments and it's ready. Actually, let's move the product name slightly higher inside the card. Yeah, this looks better now. Next, let's group each KPI card into a single object. So we select the shape, the icon, the text, and any additional elements, then group them together. This makes it much easier to move and resize everything consistently. Repeat the same process for all KPI cards. Now let's slightly expand the KPI cards together with the logo so they occupy the available space more evenly across the top section. Then we select them all and use Distribute horizontally to create equal spacing between each element. And finally, we use Align Middle so everything sits perfectly on the same line. Perfect. Now the upper section of our dashboard is ready. Now let's move to the line chart. First of all, we can change the title to something more descriptive like Profit over Time. Next, let's remove the legend. In this case, it doesn't really add any useful information and only occupies space. And just like with the KPI cards, we'll apply a gradient fill to the chart background. Luckily, Excel kept our previous gradient selection, so it applied it instantly. Let's also change the border color to a deep green and enable the rounded corners option. It's a small detail, but rounded corners make the dashboard feel more modern and visually smoother compared to sharp edges. Now we need to update all the other elements inside the chart to match the dark background. Let's start with the title, change the font to Georgia, and make it white. Then select the axis labels on both the horizontal and vertical axes and make those white as well. Let's also increase the size of the title. Next, select the horizontal grid lines, change their color to white, and increase the transparency. This way, they are still subtly visible as a guide for the eye, but they do not compete with the actual data. Now, select the line itself and change its color to white, so it stands out clearly against the dark green background. And now, let's add a nice finishing touch. We will add drop lines, which are vertical lines that fall from each data point down to the horizontal axis. Go to Chart Design, then Add Chart Element, then Lines, and select Drop Lines. These add a clean visual structure that helps the viewer read each data point more precisely. Here, let's apply a gradient line. We'll remove the two middle gradient stops and make both remaining stops white, but for one of them, we'll set the transparency to 100%. This creates a fading effect where the line starts solid at the data point and gradually disappears toward the axis, which looks much more elegant than a plain straight line. And finally, we can also add the same bevel effect we used before to keep the styling consistent across the whole dashboard. Now let's focus on the remaining charts, where we'll mostly repeat the same formatting process. To keep the video fast and focused, we'll speed through some of these repetitive steps. For the bar charts, we can first increase the bar width to make them more visually impactful. Then we apply the same bevel effect as before to give them that same three-dimensional finish. Moving on to the donut charts. After selecting the donut itself, from this panel we can adjust the size of the hole in the center. And just like before, let's also add a small bevel effect. For the colors, we need to select each individual section of the donut separately and then apply the color we want. For the second section, let's choose another shade of green to keep consistency while still creating some contrast. Here it's also very important to add labels, because unlike line or bar charts, donut charts don't have axes to explain the values. From the formatting panel on the right, we can enable both category name and percentage. Then we can manually move the labels slightly outside the chart so they become easier to read. Finally, let's make the labels white for better visibility. Perfect. Same process for the final donut chart. Now, using the Align options, we can properly align all 4 charts so the layout feels cleaner and more balanced visually. We can select them in pairs and use align right, align left, align top, or align bottom, depending on the adjustment we need. Now let's move to the slicer. We can try some of the pre-built slicer styles that are automatically influenced by the workbook color theme we selected earlier. Let's test this one. Okay, this fits nicely with the overall dashboard design. And speaking of the slicer, let's quickly test how the dashboard behaves now by selecting different regions. Perfect. Everything updates dynamically, exactly as we wanted. Now, the last remaining object to format is the Insights rectangle. To save time, we can once again reuse the formatting from the KPI cards. Click once to select the whole grouped KPI object, then click again to select only the shape itself. Now, using Format Painter, we can instantly apply the same style to the Insights rectangle. Now let's actually analyze the dashboard and extract some useful insights. One thing that immediately stands out is that profit remains relatively stable throughout the year, but in December we can clearly see a major increase. So let's write this as our first insight. Profit remains stable throughout the year, with a strong increase in December. Now let's make the text white. Remove the text box fill and outline. Increase the font size. And leave some space on the left side for an icon. We can simply duplicate this text box so the formatting is already ready for the next insight. Another thing that clearly stands out is that product D is the top performing product across all regions. Now let's add 2 icons. For the first insight, we can use this chart icon. Let's resize and format it properly. And for the second insight, we can search again for winner. This one looks good. Let's also make it white to match the overall style. Now we can hide the first 2 worksheets, so only the final dashboard remains visible. And one more useful tip. We can select multiple regions from the slicer by holding the Control key while clicking. Perfect. So the dashboard is now complete, the slicers are working properly, and we are finally ready to send it back to our friends at Velora. If you made it this far, you are exactly the kind of person this channel is made for. Thank you for watching, and feel free to subscribe because this is only the first video in our dashboard series here on Excel Artista.